Odysseus had done it. He had escaped the Cyclops. His men were still alive. The ship was already pulling away from the shore. He was safe. All he had to do was keep his mouth shut. But he couldn't. He turned back toward the island, looked at the blinded monster, and shouted his real name. Odysseus, king of Ithaca, the man who had blinded Polyphemus. And that one word cost him 10 years. Because Polyphemus was not just a monster. He was the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea. And now Poseidon knew exactly who to punish. A journey that should have taken weeks became a decade of suffering. Cannibals, a witch, the land of the dead, the Sirens, sea monsters, and a home that kept slipping farther away. But the strangest part is this. The greatest enemy Odysseus faced was not the Cyclops, not even Poseidon. It was the one thing he could never escape: himself. And some of the most important parts of that journey were never shown in the movie. So to understand what really happened, we have to go back to the night Troy fell. For 10 years, the Greeks had fought outside the walls of Troy. 10 years. Men had grown older there, friends had died there, and heroes had become legends. But Odysseus became famous for something different, not his strength, his mind. When the walls of Troy refused to fall, Odysseus helped create a plan that didn't require breaking through them: a wooden horse. The Greeks appeared to sail away, leaving the horse behind as a gift. The Trojans brought it inside their own walls, and that night, Greek warriors hidden inside came out. The gates were opened. Troy fell. After 10 years of war, Odysseus had finally won. And now he wanted something surprisingly ordinary. He wanted to go home, back to Ithaca, back to his wife Penelope, back to his son Telemachus, who had been only a child when his father left. Odysseus had already lost 10 years to war. He had no idea that the journey home would take 10 more. And the first warning came almost immediately. Odysseus and his men landed in the country of the Cicones. They attacked the city, took food, took treasure. And then Odysseus told his men it was time to leave. They refused. They stayed. They ate. They drank. They celebrated as if the danger was over. But while they celebrated, the survivors of the city were calling for help. Reinforcements arrived, and suddenly, the men who had survived 10 years at Troy were dying on a beach because they stayed one night too long. Odysseus managed to get the survivors back to sea. But men were already missing from the ships. And this would become a pattern, again and again. Odysseus would escape the danger, but almost never without losing something. Then came an enemy that looked nothing like an enemy. No swords, no giant, no storm, just a flower, the lotus. Odysseus's ships reached a strange land where the people ate it peacefully. Some of his men tried the lotus too, and then something changed. They stopped asking about Ithaca. They stopped thinking about their families. They didn't want to return to the ships. They didn't want to continue the journey. They simply wanted to stay. Think about that for a moment. The first great temptation on Odysseus's journey wasn't wealth. It wasn't power. It wasn't even immortality. It was forgetting. Forgetting the people waiting for you. Forgetting the promises you made. Forgetting that you ever wanted to go home. Odysseus refused to let them disappear into that comfort. He dragged his men back to the ships, forced them aboard, and ordered the crew to sail away. He had defeated the temptation, for now. But the next island would be different, because there, Odysseus would meet something too powerful to defeat with a sword. A creature that would eat his men alive. A creature trapped behind an enormous stone. And strangely, Odysseus's greatest weapon against it would be a single word. A word Christopher Nolan left out of the movie. The next island looked harmless. Sheep on the hills, smoke rising from a cave, food inside. Odysseus's men wanted to take what they needed and leave. But Odysseus wanted to meet whoever lived there. That choice trapped them inside a cave with Polyphemus, a Cyclops, a giant with one enormous eye. When he returned, Polyphemus rolled a massive stone across the entrance, a stone none of them could move. Then he saw the strangers. Odysseus appealed to the ancient law of hospitality. Polyphemus did not care. He grabbed two men, killed them, and ate them. Odysseus wanted to strike back immediately. But if he killed the Cyclops, who would move the stone? They would die inside the cave with him. So Odysseus needed something better than strength. He needed a trick. He offered Polyphemus strong wine. The Cyclops drank, then asked for more. Soon the giant was barely able to stand. And then he asked Odysseus a simple question. What is your name? Nobody. Not Odysseus, not king of Ithaca. Nobody. This is one of Homer's cleverest details, and the movie leaves it out. Polyphemus drank again and collapsed. Odysseus and his men took a wooden stake, sharpened it, heated the point in the fire, and while the Cyclops slept, drove it into his only eye. Polyphemus screamed. The other Cyclopes came running. From outside they shouted, "Who is hurting you?" And Polyphemus answered, "Nobody." So they left. One word had defeated a giant. But Odysseus still had to get out. The next morning, the blinded Polyphemus opened the cave to let his sheep leave. He sat beside the entrance, feeling the back of every animal as it passed. Odysseus had already thought ahead. He tied his men beneath the sheep. One by one, they passed under the Cyclops' hands and escaped. Finally, Odysseus reached the ship. They pushed away from the island. They had survived. The plan had worked perfectly. And then Odysseus ruined it. As the island grew smaller behind them, he shouted back at Polyphemus. He mocked him. His men begged him to stop. "Enough! "Keep rowing." But escaping as nobody was no longer enough. Odysseus wanted the monster to know who had beaten him. So he turned toward the shore and shouted his real name. "Odysseus, king of Ithaca, the man who blinded you." That was all Polyphemus needed. He raised his hands and prayed to his father, Poseidon. He asked the god of the sea to stop Odysseus from reaching home. And if fate still allowed him to return, let him arrive late, alone, broken. Think about what just happened. Odysseus escaped because he called himself nobody, then endangered everything because being nobody wounded his pride. He wanted credit. He wanted his enemy to remember his name. And he got exactly what he wanted. Polyphemus remembered. So did Poseidon. That single moment tells us something important about Odysseus. His intelligence keeps saving him. His pride keeps creating new dangers. And the next time home came within reach, there would be no Cyclops, no monster, no battle. Just a leather bag, a sleeping Odysseus, and men who thought their leader was hiding treasure from them. They would be close enough to see Ithaca, and then they would lose it again. After leaving the Cyclops behind, Odysseus finally met someone who wanted to help him. Aeolus. Keeper of the winds, Aeolus gave Odysseus an extraordinary gift. He trapped every dangerous wind inside a leather bag and left only one breeze free, the wind that would carry them home. For days it worked. No monsters, no battles, no gods attacking from the sea, just a ship moving toward Ithaca. And then they saw it. Home. The fires of Ithaca were visible in the distance. After war, after death, after everything, Odysseus was finally close enough to see the island he had dreamed about for years. And for the first time in days, he allowed himself to sleep. That was the mistake. His men looked at the leather bag. They knew Aeolus had given it to Odysseus, but they did not know what was inside. And slowly, suspicion began to grow. Maybe it was gold, maybe treasure, maybe their king had been hiding something from them. So while Odysseus slept, they opened it. Every trapped wind exploded out at once. The sea changed, the ship turned, and Ithaca, the island they could already see, began disappearing behind them. Imagine waking up and realizing home had been right there, close enough to see, and now it was gone again. This entire moment is missing from the movie, but in Homer's story, it matters. Because no monster defeated Odysseus this time, no god attacked him. He lost home because his own men no longer trusted him. And what came next would cost him almost his entire fleet. They reached another land. At first, the harbor looked safe, almost too safe. Odysseus sent men ahead to investigate. They found people there, but these were not ordinary people. They were Laestrygonians, giants, and cannibals. The attack happened fast. Huge rocks crashed down onto the ships. Men were dragged from the water, ships were smashed against the harbor. There was no clever escape plan this time, no trick, no heroic victory. Almost the entire fleet was destroyed. Only one ship escaped, Odysseus's. The man who had left Troy with a fleet was now watching that fleet disappear behind him. And still, he kept sailing. Eventually they reached the island of Circe, and this danger looked different. Circe did not attack with rocks. She welcomed the men inside, fed them, gave them wine, made them comfortable. And then she turned them into pigs. Odysseus went after them, but before he reached Circe, Hermes appeared. The messenger of the gods gave him a special herb, one that would protect him from her magic. So when Circe tried to enchant Odysseus, nothing happened. For once, the trap failed. Odysseus forced her to restore his men, and suddenly, the dangerous witch became their host. They ate, they drank, they rested. Days became weeks, weeks became months, and eventually, an entire year passed. Think about that. Odysseus had spent years saying he wanted to go home. But sometimes, the thing keeping him away from home was not Poseidon, not a monster, not even a curse. Sometimes, he simply stopped moving. Eventually, his own men had to remind him. Ithaca, Penelope, Telemachus, home. Odysseus finally prepared to leave, but Circe told him something he did not expect. You cannot go home yet. There was one more journey he had to make. Not across the sea, not to another island, somewhere much darker. To find the way home, Odysseus first had to travel to the world of the dead. Odysseus sailed to a place no living man wanted to visit, the edge of the world, where he called up the dead. He had come looking for Tiresias, a prophet who could tell him how to reach home. But before Tiresias appeared, Odysseus saw someone he never expected: his mother. When Odysseus left Ithaca, she had still been alive. Now she was among the dead. He tried to embrace her, once, twice, 3 times, and each time his arms passed through nothing. Only then did Odysseus learn that she had died while he was away. Not in battle, not from a monster, but from grief and longing for her son. For the first time, the cost of his absence was standing directly in front of him. Then came Tiresias, and his warning was simple. There would be an island ahead. On that island were cattle belonging to Helios, the sun god. Do not touch them. If the men left the cattle alone, there was still a way home. If they killed them, the crew would be destroyed. Odysseus would survive, but he would return alone. And then Homer gives us another strange moment. Odysseus meets Achilles, the greatest warrior of the Trojan War, a man who chose glory, knowing it would mean an early death. But now, among the dead, Achilles no longer sounds like a man celebrating glory. He tells Odysseus that being alive, even poor and powerless, would be better than ruling over the dead. The hero who once chose fame over a long life now understands the price. And Odysseus leaves the dead carrying a warning he cannot afford to forget. But the next danger was designed to make him forget everything else. the Sirens. Circe had warned him about them. But here is the part people often miss. The Sirens did not simply promise beautiful music. They promised knowledge. They claimed to know what happened at Troy. They claimed to know things hidden from ordinary men. And for Odysseus, a man proud of his own mind, that was almost impossible to resist. So he made a plan. His men filled their ears with wax. Odysseus had himself tied to the mast, and he gave them one order: "No matter what I say, do not untie me." The Sirens began to sing. Odysseus begged, he shouted, he ordered his men to release him. They only tightened the ropes, and they sailed past. Odysseus had survived temptation by admitting something uncomfortable. He could not trust himself. But what came next offered no clever escape. Scylla and Charybdis. One could destroy the entire ship, the other would take only a few men. Circe had already warned Odysseus what would happen. 6 men would die, and Odysseus did not tell them. He sailed closer to Scylla. 6 of his men were taken. There was no victory, only the choice that killed fewer people. Then came the island of Helios. The warning from the dead was still clear: do not touch the cattle. But storms trapped them, food disappeared, hunger took over, and while Odysseus slept, his men killed the sacred cattle. When they finally returned to sea, Zeus struck the ship. Every man died, except Odysseus. The man who had left Troy surrounded by warriors was now alone. No fleet, no crew, no one left to command. And the next place he reached would offer him something stranger than rescue. A life where he would never have to die at all. Odysseus washed ashore alone. No ship, no crew, nothing left. And there he met Calypso, a powerful nymph who kept him on her island for years. But here is something the movie changes. In Homer, Calypso does not use the lotus to make Odysseus forget who he is. He remembers Ithaca, he remembers Penelope, and he wants to leave. Calypso can offer him comfort, safety, even immortality. No aging, no death, forever. And Odysseus says, no. Think about that. A man who has spent years trying not to die is finally offered a life where death cannot reach him, and he refuses it. Because immortality without the people he loves is not the life he wants. Eventually, the gods order Calypso to let him go. Odysseus leaves, survives another storm, and reaches the Phaeacians. This entire stop is largely missing from the movie. But in Homer, it matters. Because for the first time, Odysseus sits down and tells someone the whole story. The Cyclops, Circe, the dead, the Sirens, the men he lost. And after hearing everything, the Phaeacians simply take him home. After 10 years of wandering, Odysseus finally wakes up on Ithaca. But home is no longer the place he remembers. Men are living inside his palace, eating his food, spending his wealth, and trying to marry his wife. Odysseus had finally reached home. Now, he had to take it back. Odysseus had finally reached Ithaca, but he could not simply walk into his palace. Athena disguised him as an old beggar so he could see what had happened while he was gone. And what he found was almost another invasion. Suitors had filled his home. They ate his food, spent his wealth, and pressured Penelope to choose a new husband. But Penelope had been fighting her own kind of war. For years, she promised to choose a husband when she finished weaving a burial shroud. During the day, she worked on it. At night, she secretly undid what she had woven. She had survived with patience, the same way Odysseus survived with cunning. Then Penelope announced one final test, Odysseus's bow. Whoever could string it and shoot an arrow through the axe heads would marry her. One man tried, then another. None could do it. Then the old beggar stepped forward. He took the bow and strung it with ease. The arrow flew cleanly through, and the room suddenly understood. Odysseus was home. What followed was brutal. With Telemachus beside him, Odysseus killed the suitors who had taken over his house. But even after that, Penelope was not convinced. 20 years had passed. She needed proof. And this is one of Homer's most beautiful details, a detail the movie changes. Penelope ordered a servant to move their bed. Odysseus immediately protested. Move it? Impossible. He had built that bed himself around the living trunk of an olive tree. It was part of the house. Only Odysseus and Penelope knew that secret. And now she knew him. Not because of his face, not because of his strength, but because he remembered something only they shared. And Homer gives Odysseus a different ending from the movie. The families of the dead suitors prepare for revenge. Another war is about to begin. But Athena stops it. Enough. Peace is restored, and Odysseus remains king of Ithaca. After 20 years, he had finally made it home. But maybe that was never the real question. The real question was, what kind of man came back?